First, I'm really happy to be here in Sirdab Lab, my first time, and the place is awesome. And you guys are awesome for trying out being in the startup and being starters, as I like to call them. Forget entrepreneurs; that's such a fancy word, huh? Yeah. Starters. You guys are starting something from scratch, which is beautiful. Anyways, so as Haider said, today I want to share the three most fundamental lessons that I've learned in my startup journey so far. Lessons that I've taken from other more established startups as well from my own personal experience. But before we get to that, let's talk about something a little more fundamental. Now, the great thing here, I can assume safely that you guys all want to be in a startup, are in a startup, have been in a startup at some point. So you all know what I'm going to talk about. And from what I stood from the Sirdab Lab philosophy, it's centered around the lean startup methodology. So when I ask people, what's the fundamental goal of any startup? Like any startup in the world, what should be the general most fundamental goal? Sometimes the answer is something like, I want to build something really cool. I want to build an amazing app. I want to build an innovative website. I want to build this beautifully functioning software. And that's fine. And sometimes the answers are a little more honest. So they're like, I want to take something from, worth nothing to $5 billion in 5 years and then sell it to Google and stay at home by the time I'm 30 and retire and do nothing for the rest of my life. So that's a more honest answer, and that's fine too. Money is important. This isn't a charity. But the goal of any startup should be, fundamentally, according to the lean startup model especially, it should be as simple as the following. You want to make something people want. Make something people want. That's the core building block and foundation of any startup. Monetization, popularity, fame, all of the above. Those are all byproducts of either getting to this goal or things that occur after you get to the goal itself. Once you establish this, once you have something that people want, you're no longer a startup. You're a company with different goals, different ambitions, different plans. Now you're starting to think about, well, what do my investors want and what do my shareholders need and corporate responsibility and so on and so forth. Just like Google is now and just like Facebook is now. Facebook today doesn't have the same goals as Facebook of 10 years ago when it first started. So you gotta always remember this. Day and night in a startup, you wanna make something that people want. And the beautiful thing about it is, this thing wouldn't have existed without you. And before you, it wasn't there, and after you, it will be there. Whether it's a failure or a success, and inshallah it's a success, you made this. And the day you do it, it's an amazing feeling and you wanna keep doing it. So just keep this in the back of your minds today, because everything I'm going to talk about, every lesson, is geared towards getting to this point. Making something people want. Nothing less, nothing more, a simple, tangible goal. So the first lesson comes from this guy. Does anybody know who he is? Okay, well, you do because you were there yesterday. Okay. So this guy is called Kevin. Him and his co-founder, Max, they had an idea back in 2008, 2009. Their idea was an app called Bourbon. Yes, like the drink. And Bourbon was basically a geo-based, location-based app. It was like sort of like a Foursquare kind of app. Basically, you can check into places, make acquaintances at that place, make plans with them, get points for hanging out with friends at that place, and you can share photos directly from that place. Now, Kevin and Mike, they were really good developers. They're both Stanford grads, super smart people. But what set them apart from everybody else wasn't their development skills or their business skills. It was the fact that they were incessant. They were relentless about getting customer feedback. Here's what I mean. When they first launched Bourbon, all they did was listen to what people, the users, had to say about it. What did it do? What did they like about it? How did they engage with it? Now they had some analytical platforms to analyze the quantitative data. So for example, they were able to tell you, well, 76% of our users did that and 85% of them didn't do this. But more importantly, they actually left the building and went and talked to real users of the app. They wanted to see that expression of delight or that frown of frustration on their face. They wanted to hear it in their tone of voice. Were they excited about the app? What were they excited about within the app? Leaving the building doesn't necessarily have to be physically leaving the building. But you got to call people. You got to set up interviews, email. Make sure it's a conversation. Sending out a survey to 1,000 random people has its merits, but they're extremely limited. It doesn't tell the full story, and let me tell you this as a piece of advice on the side. People lie on surveys. They don't do it intentionally to screw you guys, but they do it because they're put in an ideal hypothetical situation. In the end, you're going to ask, would you buy this product? And the answer is going to be, well, probably yes. But that's not real. The real thing, the real feedback comes from actually interacting with people. So that's back to Mike and Kevin, that's what they did. And they found out that people who used Bourbon didn't really care about all the geo-based, location-based features of the app. All they cared about was sharing photos real time from certain locations. Even the location part of it wasn't really that important. It was just being able to instantly share a photo from your mobile. This is back in 2008, 2009. So Mike and Kevin, they went back to their customers again. After hearing this, they said, okay, we can focus on photo sharing, but what are some of the fundamentals problems that occur to people who want to share a photo instantly from their smartphones? They didn't assume it. They didn't just go, okay, 1, 2, 3, these are the problems. Voila, we're going to solve it. End of story. No. They actually left the building. They went to the customers and they asked, what were the problems that you're facing when you want to share a photo? What's wrong with the current available platforms or solutions? And they found out 3 main things. They found out that A, photos taken on smartphones at that time, this is 2008 time, so I think it was like 3S, right? 3S, maybe the 3, iPhone 3S. So the quality was terrible, it was horrible. You took a photo and it looked really pixelated, and if it's at night, you can't even see what you're taking a photo of. And the second problem was uploading a photo from your smartphone to any platform was super buggy at that time. It was slow, and the whole experience wasn't pleasant. And the third problem was it was extremely difficult to share photos on multiple networks at the same time. So if you had Facebook, Twitter, Flickr, it was really hard to share them all at the same time. Now, these things, they seem like they're obvious, or maybe even trivial when you see them in retrospect. But knowing what the problem is super empowering for a startup and for an entrepreneur. Because once you know the problem, you're already 80 or 70% to the solution. You're on your way, right? Knowing the problem isn't something that can be done with a couple of phone calls. What these guys did, they would spend the daylight calling people, and the nighttime coding. That's why they say, you know, entrepreneurs and people in startups, they don't get any sleep. It's because they knew that 8 to 5, 8 to 6, 8 to 7, that was precious time for them to get real feedback. Now, they're only a team of 2, so they had to do the feedback, grabbing the feedback together, and they had to code together. And this is important. When you're in a startup, if you have people who you've hired, don't rely on them on getting feedback. The founder has to do it himself or herself, right? Because you're the idea guy. You want to be there when people react to your idea. So anyways, to solve these 3 issues that we just talked about, Kevin and Mike developed a solution. They stripped down Bourbon, coded for 8 weeks, and what they got was Instagram. Instagram was born out of all the feedback that Kevin and Mike got from Bourbon. And does anybody want to guess how many downloads Instagram got in its first day? In its first 6 hours, in fact. Just a random guess. 20,000 downloads, right? 20,000 downloads in the first day. They got 1 million, no, wrong?
Do they have marketing already in place, or?
Here's the thing, that's a good question. Here's the thing. When you're doing validation, when you're getting feedback from customers, those customers become intrigued. So it's almost an organic form of marketing, right? Even personally in my own startup, I see that happening. When you go, people ask them about their problems, they're like, wait, you got a solution for this problem? And that's the perfect response that you want. When people tell you, wait, you got something to solve this issue, or you tell them about the solution and they're like, man, when's this coming out? Is it on the App Store? Does the website exist? If you get that, that's gold. Hold on to that, right? And if you keep hearing it, if you keep hearing the same pattern, then you're onto something. So these guys, 4 months, 1 million users, 1 year, 4 million users. When people hear the story of Instagram and of Kevin Systrom, they think it's, you know, coincidence or luck. Like they lucked out, right? They hit the jackpot. But it's not luck. It's the fact that they actually built something that people want. And the only way you can build something that people want, which is our first lesson, is to leave the building and get real feedback. There's no way you can build something people want if you don't ask the people what they want. Don't assume you know what they want. Don't assume you know the problems. your customer segment or your user base have or face. Make sure they actually have it. Make sure you know what they're talking about. So that's our first lesson, and to this day, Kevin Systrom attributes the success of Instagram to constant customer feedback. The second lesson comes from these two guys and the third founder, but apparently he doesn't do photo ops, so no good photo of him. I decided to stick with these two guys. Anybody know who these guys are? No? Okay, good. That makes my story more interesting. So these two guys, they're along with their third partner, they were PayPal employees. And when PayPal got sold to eBay in 2005, they cashed out and left. And they decided to do their own startup together. So their idea was, does anybody know the website Hot or Not? Right? hotornot.com? Okay. Yeah, oh, you do? Okay. So basically the website is, and I don't use it, but the website is you basically go into people's profiles, see their image, and say if they're hot or not, right? He's hot, he's not, so on and so forth. They wanted to do this similar idea. This is back in 2005, but they wanted to make it video-based. So instead of seeing a still image, you saw a video and you said whether that guy talking in the video was hot or whether this girl was talking in the video was not. Then they decided to take it to another level. They decided to include a dating aspect to the website. So now you can have all these dating features as well. You can seek people, you can, your profile, you can expand it. There are ways you can interact with people through the website. It was a whole dating website, and they called it Tune In, Hook Up. Right? So Tune In and Hook Up was launched by these three guys. And just like Kevin and Mike, there was because they learned from PayPal, there was super focused on getting customer feedback, real customer feedback. They didn't do any of this, I'll send the survey out and see what they did. At the same time, they had all the right measurement, and this is important, they had all the right measurement tools built into their website. So they can understand how people were using the website, right? And this is what they found out. They found out at the beginning, okay, it was a dating website. Then all of a sudden, people were uploading videos that had nothing to do with their dating profiles. Just random videos of complete random things. Music videos, a hamster on a wheel, making something, in your kitchen or something like that. Just random videos, nothing to do with the dating profile. And they thought that was interesting. But put yourself in their shoes for a second. If you built this whole dating website with all these dating features and nobody was using them, what would you do? You'd probably say, oh no, we got to make them better. We got to throw more features on the customer, because obviously what we have isn't good enough for the dating world. Let's just throw more stuff at them. That's a very typical way a startup sometimes thinks. If it's not going well, let's just throw things at them and see what sticks. But these guys, they said, no, hold on. Let's see how people are using it. Let's see what they like about it. And the more they talked to customers, the more they found out that people didn't really care all about the dating website. They only cared about sharing videos. These guys had hit jackpot. They were able to create a video sharing platform, and they did it without even meaning to do it. And that's how a lot of startups are born. And lo and behold, in 2005, Valentine's Day, these three guys launched YouTube.com. Right? So YouTube is actually the birth baby of these three minds, Kareem, Chen, and Hurley, ex-PayPal employees who made YouTube. So the lesson here is, which can also be derived from our first story, is pivot, pivot, pivot. I hope you get sick of this word by the time you're out of this boot camp. Pivot, pivot, pivot. What that means is you want to fundamentally change something in your value proposition. So for these guys, their value proposition centered around dating and sharing video profiles of yourself. All of a sudden, YouTube, their value proposition was simply sharing videos seamlessly and instantly on the internet. Now, the issue here is a lot of people think pivoting is easy. And it sounds easy when you say in a story like this. It's like, oh yeah, people are using our video sharing platform. So yeah, we're just gonna go ahead and change our whole startup to something else. But here's the thing. A lot of startups experience pivot failure. Pivot failure is basically the inability to fundamentally change something about your startups. I'm not talking about tiny tweaks. I'm not talking about a design tweak, or maybe changing your revenue model just a little bit, right? So instead of charging 5 KD a month, we're going to charge 3 KD a month, and everything's going to be okay, and we're going to get a lot of users all of a sudden. No. If you have the right measurements, and if you're getting constant customer feedback, you got to be able to align yourself with the customer. Don't wait for the customer to align themselves with you, because that'll never happen. And a lot of people think that's the way it works. They think they got a product, and we're just going to wait for the customer to think our product is great. Listen to your customers and pivot. So what are the three main reasons that people experience pivot failure or startups? The first one is lack of measurement. And I'm talking about strictly quantitative measurement, which basically means you put a product out there. So if any of you guys are working on an app right now, okay, have you thought about how you're going to measure how people are engaging with your app?
No.
Okay, you got to think about that, and that's a very common issue. You spend 90% of the time making your app, and 10% of the time ignoring this problem. You know it exists and you know you need it, but you just don't want to do it because it doesn't sound fun. But for me, in my personal experience with our startup, we spend at least a third of our time developing measurement metrics. So we know exactly what people are doing in our app, how much time they're spending on screen X, how much time they're spending using feature Y, where's the drop off for them, how many times do they come back, how many times do they come back every day, how many times do they come back every week, what defines our engaged user. Is it somebody who comes in once a month? It's not just a bunch of stats. You got to actually have some thought behind those stats. But you got to have them. Otherwise, you'll never know what's going on in your app or your website, and there's no way for you to pivot then. The second one is technical inflexibility. What that basically means is your development team is either outsourced, so you can't keep going back to them for changes, and it's super slow for you to do that, or your current team isn't up to the task. I'm not a coder or developer, but I'm sure some of the developers here would tell you, when you're building a product in the lean startup way, you got to make sure that your code is agile, it's flexible, so that as soon as you get customer feedback and you take it to your technical team, they can quickly turn it around and translate that feedback into an actual feature. If it takes you 2-3 months for you to implement some feedback and build a feature, you're either building a feature that's too big, or you're doing it very slow, and it means you need to upgrade your technical team. The third one, and that's the most common one, and unfortunately it's the most serious one, and it's the hardest to cure: stubbornness. Normally stubbornness of the founders. So you guys, right? So I'm talking to the founders, and I'm assuming everybody here is a founder or wants to be a founder. Stubbornness. Here's what I find. I know some startups here in Kuwait and internationally that have a product, and it looks amazing, and the idea is incredible, right? I've seen some incredible ideas, but nobody's using those products. They'll tell me one of two things. Either we're not spending any money on marketing, so nobody knows about our product. We just got to spend $1 million on marketing, and everything's going to be fine, and the world's going to be full of rainbows and flowers and whatnot, right? Or the second thing they'll tell me is we're a disruptive product. And man, oh man, do I cringe when somebody tells me they have a disruptive product. A disruptive product basically means it's a product that's going to revolutionize an entire industry. And those only come along once every eclipse, maybe, I don't know, right? So extremely rare. Google is one, Facebook is one, and those are the companies that stand out above everybody else. But you don't have to be a disruptive business to be a success. Get that idea out of your mind. And there's a really thin line between a disruptive business and between a disruptive product and a product that nobody wants. A really thin line. You gotta really understand whether your product is disruptive or not. If nobody's using it and you're telling me that no, we just gotta spend more money educating the customer, that's super dangerous. That can be a black hole for money. And I personally know startups that have spent millions of dollars marketing a product that nobody uses just because it's a great product. I'm not saying it's not a great product, but honestly, I use it just, so I get them off my back. But if I had the choice, I wouldn't even use it. And I don't think a lot of people use it as well. I don't know their data, but that's the case. So stubbornness. Be flexible. Be open to the idea that you might need to fundamentally change your startup idea. PayPal went through 5 different pivots before they arrived at PayPal as it is today. Just keep that in your mind. Groupon. It was first a campaign crowdsourcing platform, right? Let's see, what else? You got, I'm trying to think of ideas of people who pivoted. If you Google startups who pivoted, you're going to find tons and tons and tons of startups that eventually found success through pivots. So pivot, pivot, pivot. Lesson number 3, and the last lesson is from this guy. Does anybody know who he is? Tony Hsieh, thank you. Okay. Tony Hsieh. Tony Hsieh, it's actually, the story is more about his co-founder, but again, that guy doesn't take photo ops, so I couldn't find any Google images of him. But anyways, Tony Hsieh and his friend, Martin I think was his name, they had an idea. Their idea was people wanted to buy shoes online. It's simple. But at that time, this is back in 2000, 2001, I think, the idea was basically just a theory, right? It was just a hypothesis. Nobody has done it before. There wasn't anything like it on the internet. And it sounded right. It sounded like people wanted to buy shoes online. But also kind of maybe doesn't work, because how can you try shoes on from behind the screen? How can you see the real color? How can you feel the shoe? So on and so forth. So they just had an idea. Now, these guys, they're experienced entrepreneurs. So here's what they did. Instead of going out and spending millions and spending hours and hours trying to develop this idea and then see if people want it, they built a much lower scale, much more low-tech version of it. What they did was they set up a website within a couple of weeks, really simple website. They went to their local retail stores in LA, took a few pictures of shoe inventory, put them up on the website, and waited for people to order. If they got an order, they would take it to the shoe store, buy the item full price, take the shoe, put it in a package it themselves, and ship it off. So fully manual, right? Nothing complicated, nothing high tech about it. But all they wanted to do was to see if people actually were ordering stuff online. Do people want to buy shoes online? Simple as that. And to their happiness, yeah, they found out that people do actually want to buy. And I think they ran out of their first server capacity in like a week or 2 weeks, something like that. So it was a good sign. Things are going well. Then they started to build it. And in 2008, their baby, Zappos.com, got sold for Amazon for $1.2 billion. Right? Not bad. Not bad at all. But just so you know, here's an interesting fact. This guy, Tony Hsieh, before signing Zappos, he had just sold his company to Microsoft for $260 million. So he was sitting on about $100 million in the bank, and he had all that money, and he still did it the low-tech, MVP, lean way. Because lean isn't about how much money you have in the bank. It's about validating before you start scaling. So that's our third lesson. Validate before you scale. Don't go and build a whole, product, spend years and years on it, and then see if people want it. That's just going to be a waste of your time, energy, and money. Make sure people want what you're building before you go ahead and build it. There's no shame in launching something that doesn't look good. There's no shame in building something that doesn't scale. And here's what I mean by doesn't scale. Remember this piece of advice. I didn't come up with it. It's Paul Graham, the father of Y Combinator. He said, it's okay to build something that doesn't scale. Here's why he said that. People, coders especially, right? They think they can solve every single problem from behind the computer with lines of code. Every single problem. They think, okay, we're just going to code it out, and it's going to be, because they want to automate everything. They want something that can go global, that can scale. But building something that scales takes a long, long time. If you leave some features for you to manually do, put in some of the handwork by yourself, you'll get your product out there much faster, and you'll validate much faster if your product is something that people want or not. So it always goes back to that. Make sure you're building something people want, and the only way for you to find that out is to give them some teasers, some testers, before you go out and build the whole thing. So that's lesson number 3. So, does anybody know who this guy is? There's no lesson, I'm just curious. Okay, he's my favorite entrepreneur, Drew Houston. Drew and all of his buddies that we just mentioned, and every successful entrepreneur you know, they have one thing in common. And for me, it's a personal belief. I don't have any stats to back this up, but it's a personal belief. Every successful entrepreneur and every successful startup founder has one thing in common. They wake up every single day obsessed with the idea of building something that people will use, building something that people want. They don't care about the money. Money comes and money goes. But they have this passion, this obsession. Let me give you an example. Elon Musk. Elon Musk is the craziest entrepreneur out there, all right? He has millions and millions and millions of dollars from the sale of PayPal, and he still takes huge risks building these incredible products. Tesla, SpaceX, all his babies, right? You got Max Levchin, also PayPal. He left PayPal, he netted about 90 or $80 million from PayPal. And after PayPal, before PayPal, he started to build, I think, 4 different companies. And after PayPal, he went on to build another 2. He doesn't need the money. I mean, the guy has 70 million in the bank, but what he cares about is building something that people want. So please, if you have that passion, keep it burning. Don't worry about failure, because like Drew says, you only have to get it right once. It's okay to fail. This is a really comforting quote. Remember it in your darkest times, because you're going to have those times. When you're down and you think you have a failure ahead of you, just think, how can I pivot and how can I get it right? Because if you get it right that just one time, then all your failures are just going to look like lessons that you learned to get there. And you're going to be so very close to having a huge successful company, inshallah. So that's the lesson, the last lesson I leave you with. But as Haider mentioned, I also have a little epilogue for multi-sided platforms, a little bit of a technical slideshow right now. So multi-sided platforms. Why am I here talking about multi-sided platforms? Because my startup is smallkuwait.com. We're actually going to pivot to Yazli, Yazli.com. You can check it. It's an app. It's going to launch soon, inshallah.
Perfect name, by the way.
Thank you. You're going to like it, inshallah. Use it. It's that basically our app and our website is a multi-sided platform connecting small businesses to their customers. Simple as that. So my scars and my lessons and everything, I'm going to try to give you the main two things, because we don't have a lot of time, the main two things that I've learned about building a multi-sided platform. So first of all, what's a multi-sided platform? A multi-sided platform is any software, app, or website, any platform that connects two or more different groups together, right? So if you got two groups and you're acting like the middleman between them, you have a multi-sided platform. I know you guys are working on ideas. So if any of you is thinking about building a multi-sided platforms, okay, please pay attention to the few upcoming slides. And even if you're not thinking about it now, multi-sided platforms are really common for startups, right? They're really common to try, not really common to succeed, but a multi-sided platform idea will come along in your mind sometime in your life. I guarantee that, right? So a multi-sided platform can be one of two things. It can be a marketplace, like eBay, where you can actually transact. So eBay connects individual sellers to individual buyers. Or a more local example, Talabat, who you guys invited here a few weeks ago, or last week. All right, so Talabat connects restaurants to hungry people, I guess, right? 965 connects people who want to buy flowers with flower shops. And there's a transaction that goes on through this middleman, through eBay, through 965, through Talabat. Because a transaction occurs, it's ranked as it's classified as a marketplace. The second type is a community or a network, where that means basically a social network where you're connecting different people together. You're sort of the magnet between two people, connecting them together. Or it could be a search network like Google, connecting you to websites, connecting people who have a search query to their search results. And it could be another local example, Kuwait Car. Now Kuwait Car isn't classified as a marketplace because there's no actual transaction going on. You're just simply linking people who want to buy a car to people who want to sell a car. And that's it, right? So these are the different kinds of marketplace or community multi-sided platform. Now, just a side point, I also believe that Google is actually a different kind of multi-sided platform as well, because it connects advertisers to users, right? When you go in and you see these PPC ads, that's basically Google being the middleman between you and your. So if you think about it, a newspaper can be a multi-sided platform. TV is a multi-sided platform as well, if you think about it from an ad perspective. You generate content, that's normally how it works. You generate content, or you have somebody generate content, and you try to link that content to somebody else.
Does that count as a marketplace? Why the whole advertising, no, right?
Well,
There's
no.
money.
I mean, the definition of a marketplace is where you're actually getting a tangible product or service. An ad is an ad, it's not really a marketplace. But yeah, you can think about it that way too. It doesn't really matter. Okay, so what are the two things that I want to talk about today? I think these two things make or break a multi-sided platform. Forget everything else. There are so many lessons about multi-sided platforms and about startups, but these two things, they make or break a multi-sided platform. The first one is, in a multi-sided platform world, early movers dominate. Here's what I mean. If I were to tell you right now, if you're hungry and you want to order food online in Kuwait, does anybody else get any other website other than talabat.com? Right, it's Talabat, that's it. If you want to search something online, it's Google, right? There's no other replacement for it. If you want to order flowers in Kuwait, you want to look for a car in Kuwait, Kuwait Car 965, the guys we just talked about. Early movers dominate. Now, no disrespect to Kuwait Car, But if you look at their website, I mean, Heather can, you know, super dissect it with his UX presentations and kill it, absolutely kill it. Okay, so yeah, it's super cluttered, super bad. I don't like to use it personally, just because it looks horrendous, but it does a job. So why is Kuwait Car such a big deal? Early mover, absolutely.
A good example is Craigslist.
Oh yeah, absolutely. It's the ultimate example. Craigslist is the ultimate example. It's super low tech, nothing extra, nothing fancy. But the reason it got big, Craigslist sort of, he struck gold a little bit with something, but people like Kuwait Car, even Talabat in their early days, even Google in their early days, the reason they struck gold isn't because they were the best or they were the most beautifully designed. It's because they moved early. And once you move early in a marketplace, in a multi-sided platform industry, you start to grab market share. Now, normally what happens is, if there's nobody around at the time you move in, so you're in an industry that has no multi-sided platform and you see an opportunity, what's most likely to happen is there'll be other small players with you at the same time. So you'll be doing battle with them, right? Trying to grab as much market share as you can. And if you do your right homework, if you validate your idea, if you look for the right problem, if you have the right solution, you validate that solution, you'll start to grab market share, you'll grow, and then you'll dominate. Once you're above 50 or 60% market share, you've dominated. And guess what? Once you dominate, nobody can knock you off your perch unless they come up with something disruptive, which doesn't happen a lot.
Just small. Oh, sorry.
Sure, go ahead.
Yeah, just a small comment. There are exceptions, and the biggest exception, and I think happened due to user interface. MySpace was the early mover, and I used it at one point. But then I think because Facebook had such a clean interface, it was able to offer.
Actually, I don't think that's the reason. I'm going to show you why in the next slide. But you're right. Facebook did disrupt MySpace. It did disrupt it, and that's why I said Facebook is disruptive business. MySpace did control that market for a while. You had a comment?
Yeah, they were saying Alta Vista, Yahoo.
Absolutely.
Alta Vista was saying buy Yahoo, and then MSN search, and then
Yeah.
Google.
Google came in, and actually Google, they were offered for Alta Vista for $1 million, and they turned them down. Just in case you didn't know that, right? Yeah, to Yahoo as well. Yahoo actually bargained them down to $750,000 and still said no, right? So anyways, Excite did the same thing as well.
Sorry, Hashim, I think
Go ahead.
The wording you chose is important. It's not the first mover, it's
No.
early mover.
Early mover, there's a difference.
Yeah.
As I said, you don't have to be the first guy.
Yeah.
You just don't want to be entering into a space where there's a dominant player. And this is only true for a multi-sided platform. Because here's the deal. As soon, multi-sided platforms, what's their oxygen? I mean, what's their food? It's customer density and supplier density, right? If Talabat had only 5 restaurants, they're not a dominant player, and you can start your own Talabat.com and hope it works. If only 1,000 people visited Talabat every month, then you still have room to do. But once these guys get to the point where they saturated the market, it is almost impossible to knock them out because, and here's why, you yourself wouldn't use any other platform if any other platform existed. Just think about that. If you were to build another Talabat.com, would you use it to order your food? No. Same thing goes for that. But say in our case, for example, in the small business market in Kuwait, there wasn't any dominant player. There were several small players, and we weren't the first. But we thought, and we still think, that we know what the customer wants, so we're going to build something and hopefully start to dominate. It's as simple as that. So a word of advice. If you're thinking about a multi-sided platform, and that space has a dominant player, forget about it. All right? Go ahead.
Small Kuwait, they're an online store, right?
Right.
What makes you think you're going to be able to tap into grabbing enough market share in comparison to an international franchise, like, for example, like Amazon?
Oh yeah, I mean, that's I can answer that, but it's a super long answer. Let me answer that after we're done with this, and I can come back to it, inshallah. Anyways, so this is the first key factor. Early movers dominate. The second one is this, the chicken egg problem, before I get to it. Does anybody know what I'm talking about? Chicken egg problem. What comes first? So put yourself again in Talabat's shoes, for example. You go to a restaurant and you're like, come join my website, and the restaurant's like, how many people do you have coming to your website? It's like, this many people. Forget about it. I don't want to join your website. I don't want to waste time. I don't have to adapt. Saying it's free is not enough, because there's actually an inherent cost for a business to join any new platform. It's a cost of time, cost of energy, cost of management. They have to manage this platform. They have to be aware of it all the time. There is a cost. So free is never free. So how do you solve this problem? This is, before I tell you how you solve this problem, you got to know one thing. People who start multi-sided platforms do one of two things. They either completely ignore this problem, and they're like, oh, no, our customers and suppliers, they'll come along organically, and the world's going to be, again, filled with rainbows and flowers, and it's all going to be fine. It's all going to be dandy. But they forget about it, and they think it's going to solve itself. And even Peter Thiel, he himself says this is one of the main issues that face entrepreneurs working on multi-sided platforms. Another way they do it is they try too many ways to solve the issue and end up confusing the customer. So what I'm about to give you, this list, is not a do-it-all, it's a pick and choose. So the first one is customer density, which we just talked about. Let me give you an example of what it means to create customer density. Facebook, early days. It only opened up exclusively to the Harvard campus. And in about 3 days, it had saturated the Harvard campus. So if Facebook was built for the Harvard marketplace, it created dominance in 3 days. That's it. I think it had something like 10 or 12,000 people registered within 3 days on the Harvard campus. And then they went to the Northeast campuses, first the Ivy Leagues, so Stanford and whatnot. And then they went to, wait, Stanford's not Ivy League, is it? I don't know. Anyways, and then they went to the Northeast and all the rest of the country. But they slowly grabbed customer density. Why did they do this? Why didn't they just say, here's Facebook. Lo and behold, use it. The reason is they wanted to be the go-to place for students to connect with other students, right? It sort of gave them a little bit of exclusivity, which is a good marketing tool. But at the same time, if I were a student and I wanted to connect to another student, I would go to Facebook. You don't think about Facebook this way anymore, right? You don't think it as a platform for connecting with other students. But that's the way it was marketed and built first. After that, they started to expand slowly, opening it up to more and more people. I think after university, they went to high school, and then it was to the rest of the education system, and then it was to the rest of the world. So creating customer density gives you that you're the go-to place for something. And once you're the go-to place to something, you can dominate that place. And that solves the chicken and egg problem because people would want to go to your place simultaneously. So imagine if I were able to create customer density, say, in the makeup industry in Kuwait. If I were the go-to place for makeup, every single store wants to be with me, and every single makeup artist or customer of makeup would want to be with me at the same time. So customer density is a really effective strategy, and it's also good for a startup because it keeps you focused on a singular market or a singular segment.
Can we say Facebook is now losing out because it became less dense? Because I read that the number one reason people quit Facebook is that the parents are on Facebook.
You know what? I think that's a myth because forget what you perceive in Kuwait. Facebook still dominates 70% of the social media market. It still have 7 times the customers of Twitter, Instagram, and Snapchat. There's nobody even close to it. So people saying they left Facebook isn't true. They still on it. I'm still on it. You're still on it. I see. Yeah. Okay. Oh, sorry. So piggybacking. What's piggybacking? Piggybacking is basically you use the pain points of another existing network to create your own value. That sounds a little vague, but an example will make it clear. So think about PayPal. What made PayPal such a dominant player in the payment space? It was eBay. eBay had a problem. eBay was a great product, but it had a main issue, payment. Before PayPal came along, if you wanted to buy something on eBay, you'd actually have to mail the check to the seller, right? Imagine doing this every time you want to buy something on eBay. Now you got to sign a check and send it. Who uses a check anyway? I don't know. Anyway, yeah, so it was really old school. So what did they do? PayPal said, listen, eBay, you got this problem. We're going to come in and we're going to solve this. It was a pain point for eBay customers, and there were millions of them. And when PayPal came along, it was like a revelation for these eBay users. They loved it. It solved a problem they had. And that's why PayPal struggled before eBay, but took off amazingly after eBay. And to this day, the founders of PayPal, including Elon Musk, including Peter Thiel, they regret selling it to eBay because they think it should have been the other way around. If they had been patient, they think they should have been the ones buying out eBay, right? I mean, they got it super cheap. What was it? $1.2 billion, I think. That is, I mean, PayPal's profit last year was like $3 billion. So it tells you the whole story. But anyways, piggybacking is a really good way for you to create market dominance and solve the chicken egg problem. The third one, second to last one, is manual implementation. What that basically means is the same thing as we talked about just now. Doing things manually isn't such a bad idea. Here's something from our own personal experience. When we wanted to get people to review stuff, because that created the sense of trust on our app, we called the first, I think, like 300 or 400 people who ordered on our website, and we solicited their ratings. You know, it was like, okay, what do you think of X, Y, and Z? How many stars would you give them on this and that? Okay, thank you. It was like a 30-second call. But we had to do it ourselves because it gave us something valuable to our other users coming along. So doing things manually might be hard, and it might be stressful, and it might be time consuming, but it's the only way you can get the ball rolling. Imagine say it's like a snowball, right? Snowball will never start rolling unless you give it that first push. That's manual implementation. And the last one, my favorite, incentives and referrals. If I were to go to a really famous example of referrals and incentive, it's Dropbox. My man, Drew Houston, we just saw. What Drew and his team did was they still do it today, they give you is it 5 or 2? I can't remember. 5 gigabytes for every person you get onto Dropbox. So if I refer you and you sign up, I get 5 gigs extra, which actually equates to about $1 if you think about it. But PayPal did the same thing. If you signed up, you get $10, and if I got you to sign up, you get $10 and I get $10. So it costs them $20 to get every single customer. But that is such a strong, strong method to get people to try your app or try your website. And incentives and referrals work best when they incentivize both the customer and the supplier. So if you create a discount model, for example, a supplier or business might want to join you because he knows that their customer is more likely to order because there's a discount. And the customer is more likely to come order from them on this platform because there's a discount. So creating an incentive that works for both sides of the table is really, really effective. And my advice is to pick 2 or 3 and combine them. Try to create incentive within a certain customer segment so you create customer density. Try to create maybe a piggybacking strategy on a certain pain point while creating a referral system or while creating customer density. It's all about how you do it. Pick and choose, combine, and inshallah you'll solve the chicken egg problem. And once you solve the chicken egg problem and you start getting traction, you'll start to dominate. When you start to dominate, you become that guy, that dominant startup in the multi-sided world, and then you can start making all the dough and all the money and all the other stuff. You can get acquired by Google for $5 billion or whatever. So yeah, that's it for me about multi-sided. Those are 2 main factors that I've experienced were the most important for a multi-sided platform. Hope you guys sort of got them, and I welcome any questions or answers from you guys. Thank you.
I have a question, based on your experience. I don't know if you've done such work abroad, but is there any problems or setbacks that are specific to Kuwait?
Okay. I hear this a lot. I go to a person and I'm like, this is what Eric Ries says we have to do, or this is what Steve Blank says we have to do. This is the book. This is like the Bible of startups. This is what it says we do. It's like, hey, this is all good, but it doesn't apply to Kuwait. I hear that all the time. And to me, that's true. I haven't yet faced a problem where that's actually true. Now, that doesn't mean Kuwait isn't different. Kuwait is different as much as any other segment or any other marketplace in the world is different. There are things that apply solely to the US. There are things that apply solely to Europe, maybe Central Europe, more than Western Europe, or whatever. But saying that specifically it's different for the Kuwaiti market, there are fundamental principles that don't change. Like the things that I just talked about, they don't change based on the market. But the way you implement them, definitely they could change.
But what about, in terms of, say, the lack of مثلا developers or
community.
Or the internet access, مو زي networks, أشياء كذي يعني.
You can look at that as an advantage, Ali. If you can excel in this space right now while it's still sort of underdeveloped, then you're ahead of the curve. But I actually still think, like from my experience, if you go a little abroad, and our programmers are from Egypt and Jordan, and they're super smart. And the way we got them, we just went to Startup Weekend Giza, and we got the main developer of the winning team. like we need to come home, right? You got it.
You brought them to Kuwait?
Yeah.
Okay.
So he works for us, Fran, and he's super smart, and we're happy with him, and he's a rare commodity. But the thing is, we only had to really look for a little while and to find him. So under development in the startup space is an obstacle, but don't treat Kuwait like it's different from a lot of places in the world. Kuwait isn't the exception. The higher developed places like France, England, US, maybe some places in South America, those are the exceptions. Most places in the world are in fact like Kuwait. But here's one thing that you got to keep in mind. In Kuwait, there's a huge benefit. Like huge benefit, right? دعم العمالة. The number one reason people are scared in the US of quitting their jobs and going to work on a startup is salary. They don't have, there's no safety net. They end up spending all their savings and there's no safety net. Here, it's like the government is paying you to take a risk. And it's not like it's a couple hundred KDs, it's like 700 or 600 KDs, so it's a pretty good salary. Take it, live on it for a while. I know for Kuwait it's not a lot, maybe my interest in but do it. Take a risk. That's why دعم العمالة is there. It's for you to take a risk. دعم القطاع الخاص, right? So that's why it's there.
And we don't have taxes. So
And we don't have taxes. If I were to tell half my friends in school back in Illinois that you get paid to do a startup, they would move to Kuwait. Forget all the other advantages. They would move to Kuwait to do it. I've actually tried it with some of them, and they were happy to do it, but it didn't work. But yeah, man, it's an advantage. Sure.
Talking about validating before you launch your product. What if your product is an app? How would you validate that? I mean, you have to actually create the app.
Perfect. Yeah. Well, not really. Validation occurs in two stages. Well, it occurs all the time, but two main stages. So first of all, you want to validate the problems before the solution. Before even building or thinking about the solution, make sure that the problem that you think exists actually exists. What I found from my experiences, when you're going out there to validate a certain problems, you start to find out other problems that you didn't even think about. So it's a problem discovery. That's what it's called, right? Discovery. That's a discovery phase of it. You start to discover other problems that you weren't specifically aware of. So that's A. Make sure you understand what the problem is before you even think about the solution. And then the solution, you first create a low fidelity MVP, which basically means if you're thinking about an app, create maybe the design alone and start showing it to people. Same people you talk to validate the problem, show them the mock-up. Maybe it's a 3 or 4 screen design with a little explanation. The most famous example of this is Dropbox. Before building this huge software, he just created a video that explained what the software did, and he wanted to see how people engaged with the video and whether they signed up or not. So definitely create a landing page. This is what we did. We created the landing page. You can still see it, still up there, yazdi.com. It's a landing page. We just explain what the app does, and at the end, we say, you like it? Sign up. And you'd be surprised. Again, this is going back to Ali's point. When I tell people this, like, oh, come on, who signs up in Kuwait? Who signs up? People sign up. People sign up. If they like the product, they will sign up. And then the second stage, you gotta build something, yeah. But at that point, you're building something sort of not confident to the point where you're like, we're gonna build this like a company, but confident enough to build something, but don't try to perfect it. If it's 70 or 80% perfect, it's perfect enough. Launch it. If you're proud of the very first version you send out, you've sent it out too late. You shouldn't be proud of it, right? Who said that? Is it Paul Graham said that? Peter Thiel? I don't know. One of those gurus. LinkedIn? Okay. He said, so don't be proud of that first product. It's okay for it to be a little buggy, because if the customers you talk to really face that problem, they'll be happy to use a buggy app. I think Eric Ries mentioned this in his book. He says when he was working on his software, his, what was it, IMView, right? He said he got a call from a customer who said the program keeps crashing his computer. So Eric tells him, why the hell are you using it? Stop using it. He's like, no, I love it. Please fix it. This is the sort of feedback. If you get that, if you see the light in their eyes and their smile and their tone is super excited, then you got something. Not just from one person. You want it to be from at least multiple people. Multiple people. Yeah, so yeah, you gotta build something at one point.
But sorry, just to clarify, the way we designed the bootcamp, the reason why we encourage you to do the customer surveys at the beginning is the easiest way to do validation before you build something.
Yeah.
And that's why we'll include the mock-ups and the designs of it, so you can have something to show people. And hopefully next week we'll cover how to set up a landing page. So all the recommendations that you suggested,
Yeah.
we want to cover them within the bootcamp, so at least you know how to validate your ideas before you launch or before you get into development.
It took us 2 days to do our landing page. That's it. 2 days. I mean, you can buy a template now online. I mean, we could have done it in 2 hours as well, but we got a little specific about the colors and stuff, so we had to look for stuff. But it takes about 2 days to build a landing page. Super easy.
How do you feel is comparing to the international market and the market, the online market in Kuwait?
You mean like e-commerce market specifically, or?
Buying or people feeling the market?
So sorry, I mean like a marketplace in Kuwait, how it operate. Okay, I used to think before coming to Kuwait that it was an underdeveloped space, but if you look around today, there are enough players to indicate. Like in business, they teach you if there are enough players, it means there's a market. Simple as that. So if you look at Ubuy, Namshi, more. They sell in Kuwait, so they count. Souk.com, Talabat, that counts as a marketplace. Blink, I love Blink. Yeah, I mean, everybody has an online marketplace now. Every single, like even Eureka, right? They have marketplace. So definitely, if it were underdeveloped 3 years ago, it's now fully developed. It's not an excuse. If you're telling yourself people aren't using my product because it doesn't exist, the marketplace, the whole infrastructure doesn't exist, you're lying to yourself. Yes.
The question I asked earlier in terms of like basically
Oh, yeah,
entering a
sorry.
market that, there's already stores locally.
Yeah.
In addition,
Yeah.
better come in.
Sure. Well, this is how I would say about this. First of all, you got to know, in any startup space, it's extremely low barriers to entry, right? Anybody can do it basically, if they put in the time to learn. It's not like you're starting a construction company where you have to get a lot of capital and contracts and whatever. No, it's super easy to do a startup. So obviously there are going to be other players, international or local. For us, over the last 2 years, Small Kuwait has been live for a year, but we've been working for 2.5 years. And through that journey, we've made too many mistakes, like more than I can count. But now, hopefully, we believe that what we're coming up with next, after learning from our mistakes, we have some key value propositions that we think would get customers up internationally as well. Our app will start in Kuwait, but it's built to be international. Not yet. We just put the infrastructure. Yazdi. Yep. So, from my experience, and this is just a piece of advice for everybody here, if you're thinking only about Kuwait, you're thinking too small. The beautiful thing about a startup is it has no boundaries. You can go international. Just think big, right? Think of something that can encompass the whole world, or at least the whole Middle East, and then you have something big enough for you to pursue. Any other questions that I can take? Okay, no? Great. Well, I enjoyed it. Thank you guys for having me. I really enjoyed it. Thank you.